my topic was dealing with oppression and pushing for social change, the Augusta Boal way. My more broad topic was to figure out what exactly people were doing using Augusta Boal techniques to advocate for social change and push against oppression. And then my more daring topic was to look at racial integration, look at racial integration in general and see if Augusta Boal techniques could actually help with that. So my first interview with Simone, we're talking a lot about what's going on in the world, who's using what. She told me about one of the theater works that they did here in Switzerland. There are like 10 actors, I think half of them were men, and the women had them on leashes and they were walking around with them. In the end they got arrested for that, but it was when the feminist movement was not so popular, and they kind of did that to demonstrate what men were doing to women. And you know, that kind of activity gets people to ask questions, to start on what's going on. And so that's something that was done. And just recently, probably like last week, there was a different show with different kinds of women from different places, showing what it took to become a Swiss citizen. And it was just more like a comedy thing, kind of, but also to get people to think. But that was my first interview, and that was my first day in Switzerland. But as I stayed here longer, I realized that I could actually get through to my second topic, which was racial integration in, well, Switzerland. To do that, the first thing I needed to establish was that there is like a racial divide, or there is some kind of divide in Switzerland. And interestingly enough, people were able to vouch for that. For example, I mean, it was made really clear that the Swiss don't like non-Swiss becoming Swiss citizens. And I got that at the Contrôle des Habitations, because I was asking them, like, what if I, as a non-citizen, wanted to get work here? And they're like, you can't really get work here, except it's something that you brought from your country or something like that. And that the people who get work are first of all citizens, and then those from the EU. And then after that, only after that, the immigrants. And that's the level for getting work here. And so I asked her, what if I became a citizen? And almost immediately she said, you cannot. And it's only after that that she thought about it and told me about the 12 years long that you have to stay here before you can become a citizen. But her immediate response was, you cannot. And I know you were talking about your chantier. I don't know if that's what it's called, but you were talking about how the Swiss don't like to give their houses to foreigners, and it's easier to get a house from a foreigner, but even then you still need to have people to vouch for you. And I also spoke to an immigrant here in Switzerland. I think it's easier for me to speak to them because I do have African descent, so it's most of the time it's clear they're not a citizen, and so it's easy for them to trust me. So I was able to speak to someone, and they told me that yes, when they go to ask questions, people usually have an attitude towards them. And some other immigrant told me that you have to learn German to get work here, and that wasn't a big thing. And it's just these different things that I got from different informal interviews, and which did show me that the Swiss really don't like non-Swiss becoming Swiss citizens. And why that helps me in my research is because the fact that they acknowledge it makes it easier to find like a solution for integration, versus in the United States, where if you bring something like racism, you have to prove that there's racism, because we are more permissive to integration. We do let people become citizens. You look around, and if someone's a different color, it does not mean they're not a United States citizen. They can be. The process to become a citizen is shorter. You know, we have worked for so many years to permit integration. So when you want to ask that question to someone in the United States, even someone who is studying the Boal techniques, you have to first establish that there's that division, and that gets really hard. That's what I learned from my American interviews. But here it was easier, because when I went to Simone, first of all, she acknowledged it, just like many other people that I spoke to in Switzerland. They acknowledged it, and so from there, she could give me like a technique that I could use, that I could work with, or that anyone else could work with for racial integration, or not even just racial integration, just living here as an immigrant. And this, I guess my big question was, because with Augusto Ball, it usually requires people getting into a group and getting exercises done together. And I could understand how you could do those exercises, but as a person leading, what is your goal for these people? And that's what she was able to give me. She told me that like most people, when they come to this country, they don't realize what it's going to be like. They just know the Swiss are rich, and that so many people have wanted to marry her, or asked to marry her so they could just become citizens and live here, but they don't understand what it actually is like. They don't understand that there is that racial divide, and that they're not that permissive, and that the weather here is different, and it can get people depressive, and they don't get that. And so it's important that people do get together when they get, if they do get here. And one of the things that is important to aim for in those workshops is to realize what their dreams are. And when you realize those dreams, you should work towards them. And so it's not like just getting here and getting settled, or just getting here and then getting rich. No, dream for something, work towards something. She said that if you come here with your culture and you show it to the Swiss, if you do something really nice, the Swiss are gonna like you. So you need to come here, and you just don't just struggle. You have to push for something, and that's what you could do with the Augusto Bowl. You could use Augusto Bowl techniques and have that goal in mind. While I was here, I realized something, because I know this video is going to Simone, but the first day I spoke to Simone, most of the things she told me about were about the activities that were being done, because she spoke about activities in other countries. She was speaking about sexual abuse and something, other things, but it kind of seemed like it was in other countries, which made me wonder, what about Switzerland? Who is doing what for the Swiss? Like, they have so much, like, are they oppressed? And when I was speaking to, I don't want to say her name because I'm in the video, but while I was speaking to one of the citizens, she was, I told her about my topic, and she asked me, but there's no one who is oppressed in Switzerland, right? There's like, no one's getting beaten, no one is getting yada yada. And my response was, oppression can not only be seen in starving people, it's also seen in depression, spouse abuse. And to which she jumped and immediately told me, like, oh yeah, we have like high abuse rates. And later on she told me that the Swiss have second highest suicide rate. And I was just like, wow, okay, that's my proof. That is oppression right there. And then I remembered what Augusto Ball said. Because Augusto Ball had been in prison a lot and in all these difficult situations. So at first, his work was also with people who were tortured and just people who you could visually see their oppression. But this is what he said. He said, but whatever form it comes in, death is still death. And thinking about the suffering of a person who chooses to take his or her own life in order to put an end to the fear of emptiness and the pangs of loneliness, I decided to work with these new oppressions to consider them. So it's at that point. You can see that Augusto Ball, just like Dr. Catherine, is very neutral. I've realized, I've learned from my research in America that when you look at Augusto Ball, most people are trying to work with people who have apparent problems, but Augusto Ball was able to see out of that and see the problems of people who were also economically stable. And he said that too needed to be you needed to have Augusto Ball methods also to help that situation. There's absolutely so much that I can say, but I'm going to limit it to this, and I'm going to end up writing 2 papers. One of them is racial integration, and the other one will be a compilation of the works of people who have been using Augusto Boal techniques. So,
Good. So, just 2 brief comments. A couple of years ago, I had to have some emergency dental work at a local dentist. The closest dentist is in Fruiting. And so, the guy you see on the video who died the other day, Walter, took me to the dentist that he works on, but his dentist was busy, so his partner took care of me. And his partner has been here about 20 years, and he is known as the Swede.
Still known.
He's still known everywhere as the Swede. And the second is actually, there's a physical therapist who was quite famous in physical therapy and worked at Clinical Lens for about 15 years. And she finally went, I don't remember whether she was in English or the States, but she went back because after 15 years she still couldn't own property in Switzerland and couldn't be a Swiss citizen.
But I want to say one thing too, and that's because we had a long talk with Professor Kesselring at dinner the night before you all came, and we were asking him some questions about the fact that the Swiss created the Red Cross, and that it grew out of their commitment to neutrality, and that they've taken 4 very disparate cultures in this small country and blended them into one country. And he said, well, we have a very live and let live attitude. And so then we asked him about the immigration policies. And he just talked about how this was, there was an internal conflict of their values over this. But it almost seemed as if their very, their goal of, and I've seen this in Denmark as well, that their goal of looking after each other, that there's a safety net where we care for each other and we fund the education for our children. It's what you might consider a well-integrated society. And that the security of that, in a way, has enabled them to develop this also deep commitment to humanitarian aid to other countries. And yet, it's like you still have the family. You may be a strong family and you're able to help other people because you have a strong family, but it's always the family. You're born into the family and so it's a very interesting dichotomy, if you will, that I think I think even the people who live here and who are most concerned about these issues don't really understand. They just see it, like Professor Kesselring, they just see it as a dilemma, but it's not clear how to handle it. And if you look at the United States, where we have this much bigger commitment to bringing people, send me your poor, your troubled, your yearning, your troubled masses yearning to be free. We have this as a part of our national culture, that everybody came from somewhere else, except for the American Indians, who are probably among the most oppressed of the inhabitants of our country. And yet we have, we don't pay well for education. We, have very high crime rates. We don't have, we don't offer. It's difficult to provide health care even to our own citizens. So you see this. I think maybe it's important to have some compassion, which I think Auguste Boal had, in the larger sense, for the fact that the imperfections, we have our strengths and we have our enormous imperfections in each culture. And I think it's very interesting. You're taking his philosophy and saying, okay, so you know, let's listen and work with that which we see and hear in each culture. It's a more than judging. Let's you know, listen and work with what we find. So I'm glad you'll be able to continue I'm glad you'll be able to build on what you did here. It sounds like it was very useful.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.